Amber, my daughter-in-law, on barbecue night, laughed across the table. You'll be in a nursing home soon, right? My son Kevin laughed with her. I didn't say a word. The next morning, I made one decision, and 3 weeks later, everything changed. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and please tell me and others what's one life lesson everyone should hear before it's too late. Share it in the comments below. Thanks. They showed up 40 minutes late, acting like they owned the place, which I guess they thought they did. Kevin gave me that same distracted side hug he's been giving me since Amber got in his head, and Amber walked in like she was hosting, immediately making a face about the potato salad, not even trying to hide it. I had spent 5 hours cooking for this barbecue, same way I've done every 4th of July since 1983, and still I ended up being the help. She tossed her purse onto my dining chair, said, "This wallpaper is like a retirement home," then turned to Kevin with that high-pitched laugh she saves for moments. She wants to embarrass me in front of people. And he laughed too, like he didn't even notice me standing there. The kids didn't say hello, just plopped down with their iPads, Harper on the carpet, Wyatt already pulling the napkins apart, and Maddie with that tween attitude, like I was interrupting her life by existing. But I said nothing, smiled through my teeth and served burgers while pretending not to hear Amber. Ask Charlotte, do you think she even knows what TikTok is? Dinner happened outside. Just like always, long table under the oak tree my late husband planted the year Kevin was born, and as we passed around the corn and ribs and plastic pitchers of watered-down lemonade, Amber raised her wine, locked eyes with me across the table, and said it loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "We'll have to start touring nursing homes soon, right? Or are you planning to haunt this place forever?" The table froze for a split second, and then Kevin snorted, and looked down like a kid who just heard the teacher make a dirty joke. And even Charlotte let out this awkward chuckle, like, maybe if she left Ed, she wouldn't be next. I didn't respond, didn't flinch, just kept chewing my chicken and stared at my son, wondering what kind of man I raised that would let his wife speak to his mother like that in her own backyard. No one said anything else about it, but I saw the way Camille glanced at me from across the yard while refilling the potato chips, like she knew I was breaking in real time, and the kids laughed at some video on their screens while I wiped barbecue sauce off Wyatt's cheek, and realized he didn't even thank me. The rest of the night passed in a blur of folding chairs and paper plates and empty thank yous that felt rehearsed, and when they left, without helping clean up again, I took one last look at the oak tree, walked inside, locked the door behind me, and went to the hall closet, where I kept the fireproof box, pulled it out, and opened the folder labeled Plan B. It had a deed, a transfer of title, a signed trust document, and my lawyer Dean's card paper per-clipped to the front. I hadn't touched it in over a year, but I hadn't thrown it away either. And as I stood there, with Amber's voice still ringing in my ears and the smell of smoke still in my clothes, I reached for my phone and typed one message. "I'm ready." The thing they never understood was that I didn't break last night. I'd already been broken slowly, piece by piece, over years of being treated like background noise in the home. I paid off by substituting lunch for coffee. During the years Kevin was in braces and I was still teaching 3rd grade without air conditioning, the barbecue was just the final page in a chapter. I started writing the day Amber made fun of my late husband's memorial photo, said it looked like a Sears portrait, while Kevin stood there and said she didn't mean it like that. But I knew she meant every word, because every time I let a moment slide, she pushed the line further. First it was accidental jokes about me hoarding clutter. Then came the gift cards for home organizing services on Christmas, followed by suggestions that I move into one of those retirement villages with pickleball courts so the kids could finally have some space. And when Kevin didn't step in, I stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt and started giving myself a backup plan instead. I met Dean through Camille's bridge group, and I told him right away I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just needed to make sure I'd never be vulnerable to anyone who thought my value expired with my uterus. Dean was quiet, asked good questions, and then set me up with a living trust where my name never appeared in public records, just my maiden name, buried under a shell LLC in Nevada, so that if Kevin or Amber ever came sniffing, all they find is a locked door. I kept paying property taxes from a separate account Kevin didn't know about, and when they offered to cover utilities last year, I said no thanks and watched Amber post a smug Instagram story about doing our part for the older generation while I was still paying for her son's Minecraft subscription. I made spreadsheets, backed up my photos, digitized every legal document and password, not because I wanted revenge, but because I knew one day they'd go too far, and I needed to be ready the moment they did. And when Amber clinked her wine glass and said, "Nursing home," I wasn't shocked. I was relieved because I finally had a reason I could live with a line so clear I wouldn't second-guess it. After I sent Dean the text, I sat at the kitchen table where Kevin used to do his spelling homework, looked out the window at the yard where I taught him to ride a bike, and I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just started the checklist: transfer utilities out of my name, cancel the alarm service, call Camille to borrow her van, notify the trust's buyer's agent that I'm ready to set the closing. ID already packed the things that mattered: photos, documents, the quilt my mother made me when I graduated college, and the tiny ceramic cat Kevin made in first grade. The rest, they could keep it or sell it or burn it down. For all I cared. I hadn't been living in that house for years. Not really. Not since Amber started calling me Babs like we were on some Bravo show, and Kevin started asking me to text before dropping by in my own kitchen. I didn't need revenge. I needed air. And this plan, this exit, wasn't about teaching them a lesson. It was about saving myself from dying with my mouth shut and my hands folded in my lap while Amber redecorated around me like I was a throw pillow. I made 3 calls that night. 1 to Dean, 1 to Camille, and 1 to the moving company ID researched 6 months ago after Amber said I should declutter for the sake of family flow. Every time they said something like that, I added another name to my spreadsheet, another backup plan to the list. So no, last night wasn't a breakdown. It was the green light. And when Camille showed up the next morning with coffee and gardening gloves, I didn't need to explain a thing. She just said, "Where do you want to start?" And I pointed to the hallway closet and said, "Start with everything they never noticed missing." I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, but because my body was humming with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, like something chemical had shifted inside me the second I put the plan in motion. Like the weight ID carried in my chest since Kevin met, Amber had finally slid off quietly in the dark and left room for something sharp and clean. Camille had brought over empty boxes, and we packed all day with the methodical speed of women who carried too much for too long. She didn't ask questions, didn't make speeches, just handed me tape and helped me fold my wedding dress into the bin. I labeled sentimental but optional. We were halfway through the linen closet when I heard Amber's voice on speakerphone coming from the open window, and I froze, not because I was surprised, but because the words came out so easily from her mouth that it made me sick. I ever shared a dinner table with her. Honestly, if she caught the flu and dropped, we could finally put in those skylights, she said, followed by a loud laugh and Kevin mumbling something I couldn't make out. But he didn't stop her, didn't correct her, didn't even sound uncomfortable, just let it slide like it was normal to talk about your mother's death as an interior design upgrade. And I stood there holding a stack of bath towels, thinking, this is it. This is the moment I want forgive. Not because it's the worst thing they've said, but because it's the most honest. They stopped pretending to care, which means I can stop pretending to wait for them to change. I walked back into the kitchen, opened the safe and pulled out the trust documents. An escrow packet Dean had couriered over the day before. Signatures S ready, buyer pre-approved, cash in hand, 10-day close and nothing in their name to stop it. I slid it all into a manila envelope, wrote final transfer on the front and placed it inside my purse like I was heading to a doctor's appointment instead of ending a chapter of my life. Later that night, Kevin texted me a blurry photo of Harper asleep on the couch with the message, "She missed you today." I stared at it for a full minute, knowing that if I responded, even with something short, like, "Tell her I love her," I'd be letting them believe they still had access to my emotions, to my loyalty, to the part of me that could be guilt back into submission. But I didn't reply, didn't type a thing, just put the phone down and walked into the backyard where the oak tree stood silent under the stars. I hadn't told them yet, hadn't said a word about the sale, and I wouldn't, because they didn't deserve a warning. Not after 7 years of mockery disguised as banter and exclusion framed as just family dynamics. I took a photo of the yard, the swing Kevin built when Maddie was 4, the bricks I laid by hand the summer after Tom died, the spot where I buried my dog, Jasper, and saved it to a folder on my phone, called before I let go. Then I turned and went inside, packed my baking dishes and my mother's teacups, labeled everything I wanted to keep, left the rest unmarked. Camille stayed until midnight, kissed my cheek and said, "I'll never see it coming," and I nodded, but inside I was already somewhere else, already watching the scene play out. Kevin fumbling with a key that no longer worked. Amber screeching into her phone about legal rights she doesn't have. Maddie asking where Grandma went and not getting an answer that makes sense. Because the truth is, the final warning wasn't a conversation or a letter or a confrontation. It was every time I let Amber's insults pass without reacting. Every holiday I hosted without being thanked. Every meal I cooked while being mocked. My silence was the warning, and they just didn't hear it. By the time the sun came up, I had already packed everything I needed into Camille's van, the same one she used to haul mulch and folding chairs, now lined with moving blankets and storage bins filled only with what mattered: family photos and shoeboxes, my marriage certificate, the ceramic cat Kevin made in 2nd grade, a locked case with my documents, and a Tupperware full of Camille's lemon bars, because I knew I wouldn't eat if I didn't have something sweet in reach. I stood in the doorway of the house for exactly 60s, not to mourn but to memorize it. Every crack in the tiles, the sound of the fridge hum, the faint smell of lavender from the linen spray. I used to cover up the scent of their takeout boxes that Amber never threw away, and then I walked through each room one last time with my checklist, unplugged the router, turned off the pilot light, and left nothing behind except a folded letter on the fridge door taped above the grocery list. Amber started last week. This home has been sold. I no longer reside here. You have 48 hours to vacate. Legal documents enclosed. Please contact Dean Lowell for all inquiries. Do not call me. I used black ink on cream stationery and placed a notarized copy of the deed transfer underneath with the trust's logo and the buyer's attorney's signature front and center. I left the envelope unsealed because I wanted them to see how official it looked right away. Wanted Amber to hold it in her manicured hands and feel how little power she ever had. When I stepped outside, Camille was waiting by the van with 2 travel mugs and a trash bag full of my old kitchen rags. We didn't speak until we hit the freeway, and even then it wasn't dramatic. Just her saying, "You sure you're okay?" and me replying, "Not yet, but I will be." We reached my new condo in less than an hour. A quiet building downtown with no lawn, no porch, no memories, just clean walls, working plumbing, and a lock that no one else had a copy of. I didn't tell Kevin or Amber where I was moving. Didn't leave a forwarding address. Didn't drop hints in conversation. I ghosted them so hard that if I hadn't left the letter, they have called the police, thinking I'd been abducted. I spent the first night sitting on the floor with a blanket around my shoulders and a lamp plugged in beside me, eating lemon bars and listening to nothing. No TV, no appliances, just the silence of finally being alone in a space that didn't require me to play host or take insults with a smile. The next morning, I met with Sandra Chu, the buyer, who shook my hand with zero small talk and said, "All clean on title. We're closing on Tuesday." She didn't ask why I was selling, didn't offer pity, just walked the property line and confirmed the transfer like we were finalizing a business deal, which in a way, we were. My life had become a transaction, and now I was simply collecting on the years of unpaid emotional labor I had given to people who never said thank you. Back at the house, they were still gone for the weekend. Some family birthday party up north. Amber insisted they attend, even though Maddie had the flu. I knew this because she posted a boomerang on Instagram of Harper licking cake frosting with the caption, "Nothing stops a party queen." So they didn't know yet, didn't suspect anything, didn't feel the floor shifting under their feet. But I imagined the exact moment it would happen. Saw Kevin sticking the key in the lock and feeling it jam. Saw Amber marching around to the back door like she owned the place, only to find the same lock there too. I pictured them seeing the note, reading it, arguing over what it meant, Googling trust law and calling a locksmith who'd tell them what I already knew. If your name isn't on the title, your key doesn't mean anything. The power shift was so complete it made my chest tight with relief. Not joy, not vengeance, just this strange, exhilarating emptiness. Like I'd finished a marathon I never trained for, and suddenly realized I could stop running. And when I finally slept that second night in a new bed with clean sheets and no sounds but city traffic far below, I didn't dream of them or the house or the past. I dreamed of lemon bars and the feeling of locking a door behind me that no one else would ever walk through again. They got back Sunday afternoon, a full 48 hours after I'd moved out, and it couldn't have been scripted better if I'd tried. Amber was the first one up the driveway, holding a giant iced coffee and juggling shopping bags, phone pressed to her ear, barking something about vendor deposits for some party she was planning, completely oblivious. while Kevin carried Harper half asleep on his shoulder and used his elbow to pop the trunk. I know all this because Camille's neighbor, Ellen, the one who walks his dog like it's a security mission, happened to be trimming his roses when they pulled up, and later described the whole scene to us, down to the exact second. Amber's key didn't work. She tried the front door once, then again, then screamed Kevin's name like he rigged the lock wrong, and when he tried it and got the same jammed resistance, he muttered something about the latch being stuck until Maddie pulled out her phone and saw the envelope taped to the glass. Kevin read the letter out loud while Amber paced in circles asking, "Is this a joke?" over and over, like repeating it would change reality, and when she hit the part that said, "Contact Dean Lowell," she actually stomped her foot and said, "That smuggled bat got a lawyer." Kevin went pale and sat down on the front steps like the wind had been knocked out of him, and I guess that's when it hit him. I hadn't just changed the locks, I changed the whole damn game. They tried the back door, then the garage code, then called a locksmith, who took one look at the paperwork Sandra handed him and said, "This property belongs to a trust. Now you're not on the title." That's when things escalated. Amber called 911 and told the dispatcher they were being illegally locked out of their primary residence, and the police actually showed up. 2 officers in full gear and knocked on the door, but Sandra was ready, had her purchase agreement and ID out before they even asked. And Officer Ray Moreno, a tall guy with calm eyes and a clipboard, told Kevin, "Sir, I understand this is upsetting, but unless you can show legal ownership or tenancy, you'll need to leave." Kevin argued. "Of course," said he lived there for 6 years, paid for the kids' bunk beds, kept the yard trimmed, but the officer just shook his head and said, "That doesn't change the deed, sir." And when Amber started filming and yelling about elder abuse and fraud, Sandra calmly asked them to vacate the porch, and Officer Moreno gave them 10 minutes to collect anything left on the lawn and go. They drove to a motel 30 minutes away, a 2-star place next to a gas station and a shuttered Denny's, and that's where they spent the next 2 nights. Alan said he saw Kevin come back the next morning to try again, but the locks were still changed and no one answered. I didn't hear about any of this until Camille read me the text she got from Amber. "Hope you're proud of what your friend did to her own grandchildren," and I admit for half a second it stung. Not because I believed it, but because I knew Maddie and Wyatt would be confused, and part of me wanted to write them a letter, explain it wasn't about them, that they understand one day. But then I remembered what Maddie said last Christmas, how she asked Amber loud enough for me to hear, "Why does Grammy always look like she's trying too hard?" And Amber laughed and said, "Because she is." That was the moment I stopped thinking of myself as their grandmother in anything but blood. So no, I didn't reply, didn't send an apology, didn't reach out. Instead, I took a bottle of red wine Camille brought over, poured 2 glasses and toasted to peace. And the next morning, I mailed Sandra a thank you card with a bottle of lemon oil and a note. "May the house you bought always be quieter than the one you found." And just to twist the knife a little further, I sent a certified package to their motel with no return address, just a plain manila envelope containing a full-page printout of Amber's quote from the barbecue. "You'll be in a nursing home soon." Right. No context, no signature, just her own words delivered like a mirror. They checked into motel room 208 the same day they got kicked off the porch. And I only know that because Kevin's LinkedIn still had his location set to public. And Amber, despite claiming she was too traumatized to speak, posted a filtered selfie of Harper curled up on a motel comforter with the caption "chaos but cute," followed by 3 crying emojis. I screenshot it not out of spite, but out of habit. Now, like documenting the aftermath helped me stay grounded in the decision I'd made, in the reality that, no, I wasn't cruel. I was just done being the cleanup crew for other people's messes. Camille called that night, asked if I wanted to see a movie to celebrate, but I said no. I was tired. Not in the physical way, but in that bone-deep way you feel after carrying someone else's weight for so long that your own limbs forget what empty feels like. I sat on my balcony instead, watched the streetlights flicker on, poured a glass of iced tea, and deleted Kevin's number from my phone, not because I thought he'd stop calling, but because I knew I couldn't trust myself to answer when the guilt inevitably crept in. The next morning, he did call twice, left a voicemail that said, "Mom, we're not okay. The kids don't understand. Please just talk to me." I listened to it once, then played it again slower and realized something. He said, "The kids don't understand," but he didn't say he did. He didn't apologize, didn't ask why. Didn't mention Amber's joke or the 7 years of tension that led here. He just assumed I'd feel bad enough to undo it. I didn't reply. Instead, I spent that afternoon filling out forms to transfer the rest of my bills to my new address and setting up a PO box so nothing could trace back to me unless I wanted it to. I started sleeping through the night for the first time in a year. Not because the mattress was better, but because no one was in the next room complaining about the thermostat or asking where the mustard was, or leaving dirty dishes like I was the unpaid maid of a family I raised. I bought a plant, a tiny rosemary bush. I named May, and watered it while listening to a podcast about boundary setting and trauma recovery. Meanwhile, Amber went on full-blast damage control online, posting vague quotes about betrayal and elder toxicity, tagging no one, but making it very clear she considered herself the victim. Camille texted me screenshots of the comments. "You're so strong, Mama. Some people don't deserve grandkids. You did what you had to do." I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my toast. This woman who called me overbearing behind my back now wanted sympathy from strangers for being too entitled to read a property deed. Kevin tried again midweek, this time with a long email titled "From Your Son Who Still Loves You." I didn't open it. I marked it unread and forwarded it to a folder labeled emotional blackmail, and then I powered off my laptop and went for a walk. I stopped by the neighborhood thrift shop, bought a second-hand lamp shaped like a lighthouse, and smiled when the cashier said, "Looks like you're building a new life." I said I am, and meant it. Later that night, as I cleaned out another box from my old storage unit, I found a birthday card from Maddie, the kind she used to make when she was little, with crooked hearts and backwards letters, and a hand-drawn picture of the two of us baking cookies. For a second, I froze, felt that familiar twist in my stomach, that ache of what ifs, and maybe it was too much, and I almost pulled out my phone, but then I remembered Maddie last Easter, rolling her eyes when I asked her to put her plate in the sink, saying, "Mom says you like to do this stuff anyway," and Amber standing behind her, not correcting a thing. That card in my hand wasn't from the Maddie I had now. It was from a version of her that got overwritten slowly, bit by bit, by the woman who told me I should be grateful just to be included. So I put the card in a drawer, not to throw away, but not to look at again soon, and I closed it without ceremony. That night, I sent Natalie, my goddaughter, a short message. "Let's schedule the will changes. I'm ready." And when she called and asked gently, "Do you want to talk about it first?" I said no. I already did. For 7 years. No one listened. The thing about people like Amber is they don't stay quiet when they lose. They can't. So it was only a matter of time before she turned their eviction into content, starting with a series of filtered Instagram stories titled "When Family Betrays You," where she panned across their cramped motel room and spoke in this fake whisper voice like she was filming a documentary about survival. Kevin sat in the background, visibly uncomfortable, Harper playing with a sock on the floor, and Maddie scrolling her phone without looking up. Once I watched all of it through a burner account. Camille helped me set up one I only used to monitor their digital tantrums, and at first I thought it was just for attention, but then someone posted the clips on Reddit, and within a day, it exploded. The thread was called "Mother-in-Law Evicts Freeloading Family in Legal Revenge Move," and it racked up thousands of comments, most of them praising the mystery woman behind the story. People pieced it together using background clues, local real estate sites, and screenshots from Amber's own account. And suddenly, Amber wasn't a sympathetic mom trying to protect her kids. She was the woman who let her Mayo pay her bills while mocking her on camera. Kevin's job found out within the week. Someone forwarded the Reddit post to his HR department because his LinkedIn was still public, and though he didn't get fired, he was asked to take a leave of absence, which Amber posted about immediately, calling it corporate bullying by association and tagging random influencers like someone was going to sponsor her motel stay. She went on TikTok next, crying about being blindsided and how trauma hits differently when it's family, and I watched, not with satisfaction, but with this cold, detached clarity, like I was looking through glass at people I used to know, mouthing lines in a play they didn't write but felt entitled to direct. Then the DM started not to me because I was gone, but to Camille, who had made the mistake of commenting, "Some people need to learn gratitude," under one of Amber's vague posts. Suddenly she was getting messages from people calling her toxic, a snake, a bitter old hag. Camille, being Camille, responded to one with "You defend someone who tried to steal a house from a widow," and attached the PDF of the trust deed. After that, the hate stopped, I didn't get involved, didn't post, didn't respond, just watched the fallout unfold from my balcony, watering the rosemary plant and folding my laundry like none of it touched me. But one day I got an email from a address I didn't recognize, and when I opened it, there was only one sentence. Why doesn't Grandma want us anymore? It hit me like a shovel to the gut because I knew it was Maddie. I recognized the spacing, the way she wrote anymore as one long word, like she used to on her spelling tests. For a minute, I just sat there staring at the screen, wondering what would have happened if I'd left a letter for them instead of a legal notice, wondering if I could have kept the door cracked for just the kids. But then I thought back to that Easter, to Maddie parroting Amber's cruelty, to Wyatt calling me extra because Amber thought it was funny to teach him slang instead of respect, and I realized that even if I left that door open, they wouldn't come through it. They bring her with them. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my voice recorder, the one I used for documenting Amber's remarks over the years, and recorded a single line. "You'll understand when you're older and I still love you." I saved it to a flash drive, labeled it for later, and locked it away. That night, I slept badly, not from guilt, but from grief, not for the people they were, but for the people I used to imagine they could be. And when I woke up, I emailed Dean and asked if he could review a clause I wanted added to my will. Conditional inheritance based on community service hours. No access granted until verified by a third party. He replied within 10 minutes. Already anticipated drafting now. I shut my laptop, made coffee, and stared out the window, not at the chaos, but at the peace I bought with it. It was a Thursday afternoon when she showed up, and I knew it was her. The second I heard the knock, sharp, fast, like someone trying to control the moment before they even stepped inside. I didn't answer right away, just looked through the people. Hone saw Amber standing there in oversized sunglasses, hair tied back, holding Harper on one hip like a prop, while Kevin stood 2 steps behind her with that blank look he wore whenever he didn't want to deal with anything. I opened the door just enough for them to see I hadn't moved on. "Fear." Amber spoke first, her voice soft but still too performative, like she was rehearsing lines she thought would land. "Barbara, we need to talk. This has gone too far. And the kids are suffering." I didn't invite them in. I didn't say a word. Just let them stand there, with the motel sweat still clinging to their clothes and the discomfort of finally understanding they had no leverage left. Amber tried again, louder this time. "We're willing to work something out. Okay, we can all sit down, fix this for the kids." And that's when Harper, barely awake, said something that sucked the air right out of me. She looked up and asked, "Are we going back to Grammy's house now?" And I felt my chest tighten, not from guilt, but from the raw, brutal weight of knowing that even she still believed this was reversible. Kevin finally stepped forward, reached into his back pocket and pulled out a printed letter. Looked like something from a lawyer. Maybe a plea, maybe a warning. I didn't take it. I opened the small side table next to my door, pulled out the flash drive ID label just in case, and handed it to Amber. She took it like it was on fire, glanced down, confused. "What is this?" she asked, and I said calmly, clearly, "It's every voicemail, every group text, every message where you mocked me, excluded me, talked about me like I was already dead. It's all there." Her mouth opened like she was about to deny it, but then something shifted in her eyes, like maybe she remembered the worst of what she said, or maybe she realized she hadn't forgotten any of it at all. Kevin looked away, like even he didn't want to defend her anymore. I continued, not raising my voice, not crying, just stating facts. "You didn't just forget I was a person. You taught my grandchildren to forget too." Amber tried to interrupt, said, "That's not fair. We were just joking." But I held up one hand and cut her off. "Jokes don't cost people their homes. You did that all on your own." Harper started to whimper, and Kevin picked her up, said, "Please Mom, don't shut the door like this. We're family." And for the first time, I looked him directly in the eye and said, "You stopped being my family the day you laughed." When she said I should be in a nursing home, his face crumbled just enough for me to see the crack, but not enough to fix it. Amber didn't speak again. She just turned around and started walking, muttering something under her breath I didn't bother trying to hear. Kevin lingered for a moment longer, holding Harper like a shield, and then followed. I closed the door slowly, not with drama, not with rage, but with finality. And when the lock clicked, I didn't lean against the door or cry into my hands. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water and sat down. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Kevin. "I hope you can live with what you've done." I stared at it for a few seconds, then deleted it without replying. I could live with what I'd done. In fact, it was the first thing in years I felt I could live with at all. The day after they came to the door, I called Dean and told him to finalize the will. No more drafts, no more hesitations, just make it legal and airtight. I told him exactly what I wanted. Kevin and Amber were to receive nothing, not a sknot, plate, not even a sentence of explanation, and the grandkids would only inherit through a conditional trust, something that required each of them to complete at least 1,000 hours of verified community service before their 21st birthdays. Hours tracked and approved by a third-party case manager with no connection to me or anyone in the family. No loopholes, no workarounds. They have to earn it, not through blood, but through proof they were becoming better than what they were being raised to be. Dean didn't even flinch, just said, "Understood," and emailed the final paperwork for digital signature. And as I clicked through the pages, I felt the weight lift off my chest like bricks sliding off a rooftop. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about punishment. It was about setting the boundary so far beyond reach that they couldn't even pretend to misinterpret it. I added one final clause myself, a handwritten note attached to the executor's letter. Under no circumstances are Kevin or Amber to be notified upon my death. Let them find out with the rest of the world. The executor, Natalie, my goddaughter, who had spent years checking in on me between shifts, who brought me soup when I had the flu, who never once asked about inheritance or favors. I called her that night and told her, "It's official," and she just said, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I finally am." She came by the next day, brought Thai food and a 6-pack of sparkling water, and we ate on the balcony like it was any other Tuesday, because it was, and yet it wasn't. Something had shifted. I could breathe in ways I hadn't in years. No one was going to knock on my door asking for favors disguised as love. No one was going to corner me at holidays with guilt or fake hugs. No one was going to smile at me with contempt under their breath. Kevin tried texting again, short this time, "So that's it," and I didn't reply, didn't even open it. Instead, I blocked the number, then deleted the thread. Later that evening, Camille dropped by with a lemon tart and a bottle of cheap champagne, said, "This calls for something bubbly," and I laughed harder than I had in months. We sat there until the sun went down, and at one point she raised her glass and said to boundaries, and finally not giving a damn, and I clinked mine and replied to quiet, because that's what this was now. Quiet, not silence out of fear, but quiet by design. When she left, I gathered a few things for a small memory box, the flash drive, a copy of the will, a photo of me and Kevin when he was 10, and one of Tom holding Kevin on his shoulders. I placed them all inside with a note on top for history, not for forgiveness. Then I locked the box and slid it under my bed next to the cedar chest. I hadn't opened since Tom died. Before I went to sleep, I lit a candle and stood at the window for a minute, looking out at the city, the lights, the movement, the reminder that life goes on whether you're in someone's orbit or not. I didn't miss them, not the real them, and whatever grief was left, it was for the version of my son that stopped existing the day he let her speak for both of them. It's been 8 months since I shut the door and handed Amber that flash drive, and I haven't heard a word from either of them since. Not a text, not a voicemail, not even a holiday card with the kids. Handprints like they used to send for everything rotted. And the truth is, I don't miss them, not the way they are now, not the versions of them that stood on my porch begging for forgiveness without ever saying sorry. I haven't blocked them because I'm bitter. I blocked them because I'm free. And I have no interest in giving my freedom back to people who saw my kindness as currency. Christmas came and went without a single knock. No surprise visits. No guilt trip dinners. I went to Camille's, brought my lemon bars and a photo album, and when someone asked if I had any kids, I just said not anymore and left it at that. Natalie checks on me every Sunday, sometimes with Thai food, sometimes just to sit and laugh over dumb reality shows we both pretend we don't watch. I started taking a pottery class on Thursdays, and I joined a walking group for women over 65 who refused to slow down for anyone. One of them asked if I wanted to date again, and I laughed so hard I almost dropped my water bottle. I don't want a man. I want peace, and I have that now. May the rosemary plant has grown 3 inches, and I talk to her every morning like she's a roommate who doesn't interrupt. every once in a while. I wonder what the kids think if they ever ask about me, if Maddie still remembers our baking nights, or if Wyatt remembers how I used to sit on the floor and help him build castles out of cereal boxes. But then I remember that any path back to them leads straight through amber, and I already burned that bridge, salted the earth and walked away barefoot. They haven't tried to sue, probably because Dean made it clear we were prepared for that. And I haven't tried to explain myself to anyone because the people who mattered never asked me to. Last week, Natalie brought over a copy of the final executed will, and I placed it in my safe without ceremony. Everything is in place now, every piece locked down and structured so tightly they couldn't pry it open with crowbars. And I don't feel proud. Not exactly. I feel resolved. I feel like someone who finally stopped asking for a seat at a table she built with her own hands. I did get one more email, though, a few weeks ago from an anonymous address. Just one sentence. Are you really never coming back? I didn't open it at first, didn't want to know which of them sent it, but when I finally did, I realized it didn't matter because the answer was already written in every choice I've made since that barbecue. No, I'm not coming back, and if the question is whether I ever will, the answer is still no. I replied with one line, the only one that mattered. We haven't spoken since the eviction, and I have no plans to change that. Please do not contact me again unless it's through legal counsel. Then I blocked the address, closed my laptop, and went outside to sit with May. In the early light, people talk about closure like it's a ceremony, some final conversation where everyone cries and hugs and makes amends. But sometimes closure is just a locked door, a clear will and 8 months of silence. You have no desire to break. And when Camille asked me the other day if I ever hear from Kevin, I said, no, we never spoke again. And that was the most honest sentence I've said in years. No anger, no sadness, no sting, just fact. And then I folded my towel, made a fresh cup of coffee and went back to living the life I built on my terms, with no one left to apologize to.